Good evening, everyone. Just going to give everyone a chance to come into the room. Thank you for joining us. Good. All right. Looks like we can get started. Greetings and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining or viewing this webinar presented by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, or ASHA, in collaboration with the National Society of High School Scholars. My name is Andrea Plescota, and I'm a bilingual and biliterate English and Spanish speech language pathologist. And I currently work as an Associate Director of Multicultural Practices at ASHA. As you can see, the title of our time together is The Future of CSD. And we ask, could this career path be yours? Now, I love communication sciences and disorders. So I would argue yes, but you won't have to just take my word for it because today we've got some special guests and a packed agenda to convince you to consider CSD careers for your future. I'm joined by my colleague, Melanie Johnson. Melanie, can you give him a wave? Yes, yes. Melanie is an awesome facilitator and mentor to many CSD professionals and students. And together, we're going to guide you through the agenda. I'm going to start with a quick overview about communication sciences and disorders, and then we'll move on to a facilitated panel discussion with our special guests who are early career professionals and students. And then you'll get to ask your questions and get answers because we're all about communication here. And finally, we'll end the session by sharing some next steps and some tools that we've created especially for you. So now Mimi and Melanie, could you introduce the poll? It's the first poll question for you. We want to know you're out there. How did you hear about audiology or speech language pathology? So just think, quick responses. It's not for a grade. We're just curious. Lots of options. All right. I think they've done it, Mimi. Let's see what we've got. Oh, can't see them, but I imagine. Oh, I see. I see. We've got family members and friends as a popular choice. Um, Family members that may have communication disorders or not. And then some people said that they received audiology or speech language pathology services. And those are pretty popular responses that we get along with people being informed through their academic mentors and coursework. So thank you all so much for sharing that. And now everyone is about to say that they've been able to learn more about CSD from ASHA because I'd like to get into it and to let you know that CSD professionals, they change lives because this word cloud right here represents different parts of communication, things like language or hearing or voice, and conditions that affect speech and swallowing. And we all rely on communication every day, but many people experience challenges at some points in their lives. Here are a few facts that might surprise you. Like about 1 in 5 teens has a measurable hearing loss. And this is often related to listening to loud music through their earbuds. Then we have 22 million Americans are exposed to hazardous noise levels at work. Then more than 1 million cochlear implants have been placed worldwide to help people hear. And 1 in 12 children in the US has had a speech, language, voice, or swallowing disorder in the last year. And then about 18 million adults have trouble using their voices. So, why does this matter? It matters because communication is essential for learning, relationships, independence, and really quality of life. And professionals in communication sciences and disorders help people regain or build these skills. And the need for these professionals continues to grow. So, what exactly is communication sciences and disorders anyway? Well, CSD is the study of treatment of communication disorders and swallowing disorders. So, there's one discipline, CSD, two career paths, audiology and speech language pathology, and multiple professions. You could become an audiologist or a speech language pathologist or a researcher or university instructor, like many speech, language, and hearing scientists, or you could become an audiology assistant or a speech language pathology assistant. But one of the best parts about CSD is the variety of people that you can serve all across the lifespan and the places that you could work. Like CSD professionals work in schools and hospitals, private clinics, universities, research labs, and even industry settings. We can work in cities or rural communities and even all around the world. And we can even do this in person or through telepractice. And it's also interesting that CSD professionals get to work closely with other professionals like physicians, engineers, psychologists, and educators, all to provide care and conduct research. So, can you see that with the future in CSD, there are unlimited opportunities? We'll talk about it more. So, Mimi and Melanie, can you tell them about the next poll? Poll number 2. Remember, it's quick, not a test, not for a grade. Just let us know. We want to know you're out there and with us.
Tell us, which CSD career are you most curious about?
Ooh, we've got lots of options up there. Get your last answers in. All right, Mimi, I think they're ready. Ooh, speech and hearing scientist. I see that one. SLP in the house. I like that. I see that. Not sure yet. All right, that's an option too. And I'm saying, you know what? May change your mind because I want to tell you a little more about all of the options. So, first, let's start with audiologists. Audiologists specialize in hearing and balance. So, you might find an audiologist helping a grandparent hear their grandchildren again with hearing technology, or teaching someone how to connect their hearing aids to their phone, or even working with musicians or concert crews to help them protect their hearing on the job. And to become an audiologist, you typically earn a clinical doctoral degree, which we call an AUD. And that program usually takes about 3 to 4 years after your undergraduate degree. And it includes both coursework and hands on clinical training. And then there's another career option, which is speech language pathology. And speech language pathologists, or SLPs, help people with speech and language and voice and swallowing. So, for example, an SLP might help a stroke survivor relearn how to swallow safely or communicate, or support someone who is non speaking in using a communication device, or they could work with someone who wants to modify their voice or their accent. And to practice independently, SLPs complete a master's degree in speech language pathology, and that usually takes about 2 years after their bachelor's degree. And just like audiology programs, these degrees include both academic coursework and supervised clinical experiences. And then there's another path which many of you are interested in, and that's becoming a speech language and hearing scientist. And these professionals typically focus on research. And they study how communication works or how disorders develop or maybe how they can be treated. And for example, they might study something like brain processes involved in language or how hearing technology can be improved or even how social or psychological factors impact communication. But their educational paths often include advanced degrees, like a PhD, and sometimes it's in related fields like linguistics or psychology or neuroscience or even education. And then we come to support personnel, our audiology assistants and our speech language pathology assistants. And they work under the supervision of a licensed audiologist or SLP. And in this support role, someone might work directly with individuals of any age who have speech, language, or swallowing challenges. They might help patients learn to use hearing assistive technology or communication devices. They might assist with research projects, community outreach, or training activities. And this could actually be a really great option because some people use this role as a stepping stone to become an audiologist or an SLP. The education requirements might vary state to state, but assistants could work with a high school diploma, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. It all depends on where they practice. I actually practice as an SLPA in Florida. So, interesting to know. Another reason many people are drawn to CSD is the strong job outlook. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, these careers are growing faster than the national average. So by 2034, audiology is projected to grow by 9%, and speech language pathology is expected to grow by 15%. And for comparison, the national average is about 4% across professions. These careers are also regularly ranked among the top healthcare jobs. And really, all of this is to say the need for professionals in these careers continues to increase. And oh, you all are probably interested in this part because, in addition to being meaningful careers where we get to change lives, these professionals often earn competitive salaries, and we have many opportunities to specialize. So, like many careers, the salary could depend on your location and your setting or your experience. But recent estimates show that audiologists typically earn about 95 to 130,000 a year, while SLPs typically earn about 75 to 110,000 per year, and speech language pathology assistants can earn up to 60,000 on average, which is about $30 an hour. So I mentioned before that we have unlimited career opportunities. And also I mentioned how CSD careers offer the opportunity to specialize. So you could specialize in areas like pediatrics, working with children, medical rehab, voice, technology. There's a lot of technology we get to use, or research. And most importantly, people in the CSD field say that the biggest reward isn't just the paycheck, it's really seeing the impact of helping someone communicate, connect, and participate more fully in life. So now it's back to you, Mimi and Melanie. We need to hear from them. What's our next poll?
Which of the following are possible job settings for audiologist, speech language pathologist, and speech language and hearing scientist? I think this is an easy one.
Hmm. What? I mean, unlimited possibilities. What are you all thinking out there? Mimi, I think they've got it. Yes, yes. Yes, you are right. Good job. Everyone's out there listening. So, with that quick introduction to CSD, I'd love to turn it over fully to Melanie so she can transition into our panel discussion where you're going to get to hear directly from our students and professionals who are currently building their careers in CSD. Take it away, Melanie
Thank you,
and
Andrea.
panel.
Thank you, Andrea. Good evening. I'm Melanie Johnson, and I'm an Associate Director in Membership at ASHA. Now that you've learned about careers in communication sciences and disorders, it's time to meet the panel. Thank you. Our panelists, Andy Reuda, Anna Suarez, Gabrielle Howard, and Tiffany Marsh, will share their story and tell us why they chose CSD as a career and what they're excited about as they look to their future. Let's welcome our panel and learn about their journeys. Would each of the panelists please give a brief introduction? Let's start with Andy.
Hi, my name is Andy Reuda. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a graduate student clinician at California State University, Long Beach. I just want to check, are you able to hear me at all? I see that it's lagging on my end. You can? Okay,
We
perfect.
can hear you, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm a part of National NISLA's IDEA Work Group, which promotes diversity, equity, advocacy as well. And my passion is gender affirming vocal therapy. And I've been lucky enough to do undergraduate research on the topic and then present my thesis at ASHA and then also CASHA, which is like the California version of like state level for ASHA, and also collaborate with other professionals currently doing gender affirming vocal therapy.
Thank you, Andy. Anna, would you please share your introduction with us?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm a speech language pathologist and I have a master's in neuroengineering. And I'm currently a second year PhD student at the University of South Florida in Tampa. In here, my research focuses in language development, especially in bilingual and multilingual children, and how we can improve the identification of developmental language disorder in Spanish English speakers. I am from Brazil, so I speak Portuguese, Spanish, and English too.
Thank you, Anna. Gabrielle, would you introduce yourself next, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Gabrielle. You can also call me Gabby. I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist in a private practice outpatient setting. I was formerly the president of National NISLA back in 2021 to 2023. And currently, I serve as the early career professional member of the ASHA Government Affairs and Public Policy Board, where we develop our public policy agenda for our members to determine what areas of advocacy and what areas of need are needed for the populations of professionals that we serve.
Thank you. And finally, Tiffany, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I am a third year Doctor of Audiology student at Towson University in Maryland. I previously served on the IDEA working group that Andy is currently on, so I love to see the representation. I'm also the Maryland State Officer for Audiology at National NISLA, which is so much fun to be able to represent audiology in the state of Maryland and now here. Long term, I'm hoping to become a pediatric audiologist. I love working with the kiddos and their families. And I'm currently doing research on the lived experiences of deaf and hard of hearing adults whose hearing loss was identified by the newborn hearing screening.
Thank you to our panel. Now we are going to engage in the conversation with them, and we'd like everyone to answer the next question. But before we get to that, we know that those of you in the audience have questions for our panelists. So please put them in the Q&A And once we've had an opportunity to speak to our panel, we will engage with your questions. Thank you so much. Our first question is, what made you choose a career in CSD, and why did you choose your area of interest? And this question is for the panel. Let's start with Gabby.
Yeah, so I chose a career in CSD because I was always interested in education, but I didn't really want to go the teaching route. So after having some internship experiences in high school, where I worked with children on the verge of illiteracy, I shared my experiences with my mom, and she was the one who told me, "Hey, you should look into speech pathology. I bet you would like it." And I did, and I thought it sounded pretty interesting. And then I had the opportunity to visit my undergraduate university campus and sit in on a phonetics class for communication sciences. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so cool. And I decided to declare my major in communication sciences. So I was kind of hooked ever since. Um, and I'm so thankful that I chose this career. In regard to my area of interest, I've loved working with pediatrics for as long as I can remember. Um, I just think working with kids are so fun. They're so full of life, and I love that I get to kind of help prepare them for the future and give them the tools they need to be able to communicate for themselves and advocate for themselves, whether it be verbal or via AAC or that's augmentative and alternative communication, so like using an iPad or a tablet or a PEX board. Um, so I really love that. And my specific area of interest is the intersection of language and literacy, which is a very full circle kind of moment for me because I was interested in education. And this kind of gives me a little bit more of a hand onto the academic side of speech pathology and how these underlying language disorders are impacting children's literacy. So,
Thank you.
and do I need to answer part two as well or just part one?
I think you answered both parts. What made you choose CSD and why did you choose your specific area? Because that's
Okay.
pediatrics, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Tiffany, please share with us why you chose CSD.
I like to say that I found a very non-traditional path into CSD. Growing up, I learned sign language and was very involved in the deaf community from a very young age. And I knew I wanted to do something with that, but I wasn't sure how to go about that. I ended up joining the military. I did that for 12 years. And when I was getting off active duty, I still had that feeling of wanting to help, wanting to be involved in the deaf community. And after some soul searching, I found audiology, which is actually a great merge or a blend of all of that. I got to be the subject matter expert on how we hear and hearing loss. And especially with pediatrics, I get to be the advocate for these kiddos that have hearing loss and really help them and their families learn what options and opportunities are out there because hearing loss is a difference. It's not gonna, be the end all be all. So I think that's really the gist of it.
All right. Thank you. And Anna, please share why you chose CSD as your career.
I met CSD because I had a grandparent who had a stroke, and so he developed a language problem, developed aphasia, and I got to accompany him during all his sessions, and I saw how he came back to talking and came back to doing his day-to-day things. So that's when I met CSD and I was like, okay, maybe I want to do this. So of course, as many, I got into CSD thinking I would want to work with language and especially with language in aphasia. But then I met the work with kids and I've always loved language in a way and always loved communication. But what really shaped my path to this career, especially in kids development, language development, was getting involved in research during my undergrad with kids. So I had a lot of things, a lot of experience with kids during the undergrad, and then I had some more during my master's. And then I was like, okay, I think I want to go to child language development in the doctoral too. And all those experience helped me see how I can use all this to help also in assessment for kids.
Thank you so much, Anna. And Andy, please share your story.
So for me, I was in speech as a kid all the way up until like fifth grade or so, completely forgot about the profession. Did some soul searching as well. And I was listening to a podcast one day about like an SLP who I think was teaching like their dogs to press the buttons and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And I was a nursing major at the time, realized, looked into it a little bit more, and I was like, oh wow, like this marries my love for communication with also my love for science. So I switched majors, and then for getting into my specific interest of gender affirming vocal therapy, I wanted gender affirming vocal therapy for myself. I remember I had looked at the research like maybe 10 years before. And when I came back to it, I realized it was kind of just there wasn't much as far as like for trans masculine people, and that just made me realize that like, hey, there's a gap in research here. I need to do what I can in order to help fill that gap. So I went to my professor and I was like, hey, I see this gap, is that correct? She's like, yeah, it is. And I was like, okay, can I do an undergraduate research project on that? So that's kind of like what fueled my interest, is just kind of, wanting to make sure. I know if I didn't have the resources, especially as someone who is studying everything, that other people in my community aren't able to access the same amount. So for me, it's all just about making things more accessible, and uplifting others who are also doing the research at the moment.
Thank you all so much for getting us started and sharing your story why you came into CSD. We know that there are so many ways that people come into these professions, and we hope that some of you that are in this room will one day be able to share your why as to why you became a CSD professional. Our next question is also for all four panelists. Please describe a typical day for you. Let's start with Andy.
So I'm a first year graduate student, and right now it's a lot of work, but I will say I'm really enjoying all of it. I usually get to school probably at like 9 o'clock or so. Sometimes I'll have clinic where I see about two clients per day, and that's usually twice a week. And after I'm done seeing them in clinic, I'm either going to classes as well, or I have classes beforehand. I sit down with my supervisor. I'm able to ask her questions and get her guidance on everything. And then usually I'm going home at night, and I'm either writing up the notes for the day of the clients that I saw, or I'm working on other projects that there are. And I will say I'm in like an accelerated program. So not every program is going to be as work heavy, but at the same time, I love what I'm doing, and I realize that this is the right profession for me. So.
Thank you. Gabrielle, please share what a typical day looks like for you.
Yeah, so since I'm in a private outpatient setting, I have set weekly appointments and I see about 12 to 14 kids a day, in half-hour individual sessions. So I do work 4 10-hour shifts, from 8 to 6. Not every setting is like this. I like having a 3-day weekend, so I pack my time in Monday to Thursday. But within that day, I'll see my kids. Sometimes I'll have an evaluation scheduled, and I'll see a wide variety. Being in this setting, you see everything from autism to articulation and phonology, apraxia of speech, some literacy things. You see AAC. So you get a large variety. I like having set weekly appointments because I really get to know my kids and I get to know their families as well. Even though even though the schedule is set, you really don't know what you're going to get from week to week or day to day because, things change, kids, their behavior and their attitude fluctuates. So one week they can be star students, amazing. They met every accuracy level for their goal. And then the next week, you would think you haven't been working on it for 6 months. So, there's some ups and downs, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Thank you. Tiffany, what does a typical day look like for you?
So as a third year student, my program is a 4-year program. Some are more accelerated in 3-year programs. But so as a third year student, I am in about 4 or 5 classes. Usually, all of our classes at this point are either on 1 or 2 days, basically packed into one day because we're more focused on the clinical aspect of our education and as well as our research, our thesis. Um, Earlier on in the program, it's a lot more focused on the academics, focused on learning the basics, fundamentals, and now I'm towards the end of my program, and it's very much more focused on the clinical aspect. So if I'm not in class or I'm not conducting research, I am in the clinic, and that consists of anywhere between 5 to 15 patients per day. It really depends on what's on the schedule, what kind of testing I'm doing. I've had the opportunity to do observations in cochlear implant surgeries. It's very dependent day to day on, very similarly as Cappy just said, what the kiddos have to offer. Um, I think some of the cool stuff that I get to do in addition to attending surgeries and of course testing is I get to confer with like ear, nose, and throat physicians and my fellow CSD professionals, speech language pathologists, to really do as much as we can to support our kiddos. And then, of course, there's the report writing and charting and all of that stuff, which is not as fun as working directly with the kids, but it is just as important as all of the rest of it to take care of our kiddos and our patients.
Thank you. And Anna, what does a typical day look like for you?
So right now, my day, as Tiffany mentioned, during the program, we have a lot of academic and research and writing. So I'm in the beginning slash middle of my program in the PhD. So my day to day is mostly research. I spend a lot of time reading, writing, correcting, fixing any errors that we find, meeting with my advisor, asking for some guidance on how to proceed. Because right now I'm focused on the academics part and on the coursework to be in the future a specialist on what I'm studying. So right now I'm diving deep on that. And I also have a lot of time on my week to work with my research team. Right now, I'm also planning to begin to help with teaching because we need to do that during the PhD, like a teaching assistant. And I also have some administrative responsibilities within my department because I am involved in the student association for research and teaching, and also for the newsletter of the department. So I have all this combined in a I wouldn't say 9 to 5 because sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less because we have a lot of responsibility over our own schedule. Right now, I also have some classes. My classes are mainly at night, so 5 to 8, and then it's more study. But one thing I really enjoy is seeing how the research that we do can inform on the clinical practice, especially since I'm studying now more diverse populations. But I also love the days that I get to see some kids for my research because since I'm working with kid language development, I get to see kids and to do some assessments. So these are really happy days too.
Thank you. Now, several of you spoke about research. Can one of you just give a brief overview of the research that you're doing, just to give the students an idea of what that might look like, what you're trying to accomplish in your research project? Who wants to do that? Who would like to speak about their research?
I can hop in.
Okay, thank
So, yeah, of course. So like I said a little bit earlier, I am studying the lived experiences of deaf and hard of hearing adults. So what that is that's qualitative research. It sounds like Anna and others are doing more quantitative, which more power to you. I like to study what people's true experiences are, so we as clinicians can go back and guide best practices in the future. Um, I'm looking at adults with hearing loss because when they were young, like when they were born, I should say, was right as the newborn hearing screening and early hearing detection and intervention was being established. So this is the first generation who have been diagnosed early and have gone through early intervention and really have had all of the supports and services for the most part like available to them. So I want to know what went right, what could have done better, what can we do moving forward to just keep being better at our jobs in supporting our patients. So that's the long-term goal of my research is to just be better providers and clinicians for our populations.
Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you to all of our panelists for that conversation. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Ariana wants to know, what has been your best, most inspiring patient encounter?
I feel like I've only had up to this point about three patients, so I can definitely think of specific ones. But I'll just share. What was it? I had someone who came in and they had dysarthria, which basically means that like the muscles in like your face are a little bit weaker, so you have trouble with speech. And one of the things that they were presenting with was kind of more of like a monotone pitch, and they didn't have like a lot of like kind of like melody in their voice. And I remember when I had my first session with them, they basically said like, "Hey, will I get better?" And I didn't know how to answer that because sometimes we don't know. We don't know what their limit's going to be, especially when you're just meeting with them as well. Luckily, my supervisor hopped in, was like, "Hey, if you're at 20% right now, you've been doing this for like 2 years without any tools. We're going to give you those tools. Maybe you can get to 80%, and that'd be great. But as long as you're just making a little bit of progress, it's going to be better than where you're at right now." And we just had like our client swap. So I got two new clients and I had to say goodbye to her. And I remember on like the last day, she was like, "Oh wow, like I just went through like the treatment and the therapy with you, and I just heard my voice like do that melody for the first time in 2 years." And that was just such like a great thing to witness, just kind of like that aha moment. And yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget that. But yeah, I that's the thing that really stuck out in my mind.
That is wonderful. That is part of the rewards of being a speech language pathologist or an audiologist when you can see the progress that your patients have made. Would anyone else like to address that question?
I
Oh,
can. Oh,
okay.
oh, sorry. The first patient that came to mind for me was one of my friends who has difficulty spelling. And she's a very interesting case because typically spelling comes with some sort of a language deficit. She scored completely average across all receptive and expressive language assessments, no phonologic deficits. It's just purely orthographic alphabetic deficits. And I had never experienced that before, or experienced treating that before. So that, kind of prompted me to look further into research, further into how speech pathology and spelling intersect. What can I do to target that from my scope? And the reason why she's the most inspiring is because this is the case that really made me consider going into research, and now I will be pursuing a PhD starting this fall. So, this is a kiddo in a family that's holds a very special place in my heart because it kind of launched me into the area of literacy and language.
Thank you for sharing. Our next question is a dual bachelor's in early childhood education and early special ed beneficial prior to taking a master's in speech language pathology? And the simple answer is yes. Would anyone else like to address that question? Okay, yes. Both of those areas are related to communication sciences and disorders. If you don't have a bachelor's degree in communication sciences and disorders, you will have to take prerequisite courses for your master's degree before you get into your master's degree. So keep that in mind. And when you learn about the resources that Andrea is going to share with you in a few minutes, you will see our EdFind resource where you can check out all of the CSD programs and see how a person who doesn't have a degree in CSD can move into a master's degree. We do have one more question. What is your motivation to keep going when your studies feel difficult?
Okay, I think I can hop in on that.
Okay.
I mean, during the PhD, you have some highs, but you also have a lot of lows. I think in any areas, but during the PhD, the highs are really high and the lows are really low because you feel like, why am I doing this? Why am I studying this? But at the end of the day, you have a purpose. So something that gets me going is seeing how much I can do after I get that difficult part done. So, for example, right now I'm working in an assessment for bilingual kids. And something that gets me going is that I know how much bilingual kids, especially here, are overlooked because they don't have enough bilingual SOPs or maybe they don't have the right assessment for it. So when I think about it, I'm like, maybe this can help them in a way. So this is a big purpose for me. And whenever times get too hard, I'm like, maybe I've been through worse. I had this bad time 1 month ago and I went through it. So I'm going to keep going. And I know that in a week, I'll feel better. So it's usually looking into your long term goal and in your long term purpose to keep going until you finish what you're doing.
Thank you. We have one time for one more response. Would anyone else like to answer this question?
I would love to add on to this question or to this one.
Mhm.
Um, the AUD program can be a lot. Most doctoral programs take 6, 8, 10 years, depending on your dissertation. Respect Anna, PhDs are no joke. Um, we do the whole thing in 3 or 4 years, and we still have to do thesis, and we still have to do clinic, and it's a lot. But when you get to go in there with your patients and you get to see the impact you're having, even if it's just what we would call like the typical like elderly patient who has lost their hearing, once they get a pair of hearing aids and they can hear their kid for the first time in years or their grandchild, and you just see the actual impact you're having on your patients, it makes the stress and the studying and the exhaustion at times worth it because it is reminding you of that long-term goal and reminding you that I can be the good that I want to see in the field. And that's really what keeps me going, and I'm sure it's the same for all of my peers here.
Thank you so much to our panelists for this engaging conversation. I'm going to hand it back over to Andrea to share next steps and resources. Thank you again.
Oh, that was such a great discussion. Thank you all so much for sharing. I was over here clapping for you all and going back in my mind thinking about my favorite clients too. So thank you so much, panelists. And thank you all for your questions. And just like Melanie said, we have created so many resources, especially for you. Like we've got real stories from real CSD students and professionals weave throughout the resources, and it's all to help you learn more about careers in communication sciences and disorders. So, this is the part where you might want to take out your phone or your devices because I'm about to show you some QR codes that you want to make sure that you capture. So, let's get ready. All right, you see it. So now it's time to take the next steps. One thing that I would love to encourage you to do is to find the audiologist or the speech language pathologist in your school. If you're in high school, then you are in a district where I know there are audiologists and speech language pathologists. So all you got to do is find them. Then you can ask them all about their job in their career journey. And you'll hear so many interesting stories, I'm sure, just like you've heard tonight. And another thing that you want to do is to make sure you check out the high school roadmap. And that's the QR code that we have right on the screen because it gives you step by step tips and tools about what you can do as you consider joining us in CSD careers. And of course, if you want to, if you're old school like I am, I still like my paper sometime, you could always order resources that we'll send to you for free all about CSD. So you could always go to asha.org and type in career brochure and we'll send it right over to you. So I'm going to the next one. Got to get ready to capture that code because this is the next best step. So, in addition to the other things that we talked about, please make sure that you grab this QR code and go to our website, hearingandspeechcareers.org. Again, this is designed especially for you because you can learn more about audiology and speech language pathology there. You can even take a career quiz and you can explore some additional education and financial aid options there. All right, so I'm trusting everyone has gotten that one. Let me show you the next one. And it's here. Melanie mentioned this one earlier. We talked about EdFind, which is our CSD program finding tool. This one is super popular and helpful whenever we talk to people who are considering CSD because the thing is, communication sciences and disorders academic programs, they're not offered at all universities. So you really want to get out your phone, capture this QR code right now so that you can use our EdFind database to find and compare CSD programs and learn things about them like their program length, the class size, or GPA expectations. And then, of course, when we talk about college, there's the cost of education. So we're thinking about you, and we've put this QR code on this screen to take you to our page that has resources on scholarships, grants, and other student resources. You may have heard some of our panelists mention the National Student Speech Language Hearing Association, or like we call it, NSLA. And they also have a list of scholarships that you may be interested in. And again, make sure you check out their website too, because they have lots of tools and resources that students, by students and for students. So you may be very interested in reading some of their blogs and checking out their socials. And now I'm going to pass it over to Melanie and the panelists one more time to close us out.
Our
Take it
final,
away.
sorry about that. Thank you. Our final thought for the evening. Please share one thing you wish you had known in high school about CSD. Anna, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, of course. One thing I wish I had known in high school, it's how broad and interdisciplinary the field is and how many different paths it can lead to beyond traditional clinical roles. I would like to know how many things I could do. I wish I had known before how many things I could do. So what I taking on that, building on that, what I encourage you is to stay curious about not only entering the CSD field. But after you enter, stay curious because you can try a lot of different experiences. I tried so much before I decided to be a researcher. So during my undergrad, I experienced kids, the elderly, a lot of areas, and I by the end I ended up in a master's in neuroengineering that was related to CSD. So it's really broad, and if you enter CSD, you don't have to have everything figured out because you if you stay curious enough, you'll figure it out by yourself during the journey. So
Thank you. Excellent. Andy, please share.
I mean, I think Anna summed it up so nicely. I was thinking the same thing. Um, yeah, kind of similarly, like prior to being in like the SLP major, I was very much like changing my major every like semester or so. And one of the things that made me stick with CSD is just like this huge broad scope. And I knew going into this that, hey, if I change my mind, that's fine. Like I can still find something that works for me within like this field. And I have. I didn't even want to do, or I didn't even think about doing gender affirming vocal therapy when I first started. I thought I was going to work with kids. But now I'm really loving working with adults and also doing voice. So I think just for the broad scope of it, just know if you're one of those people who changes their mind all the time, this may be the field for you because of that. So
Thank you, Andy. Gabby, please share one thing you wish you had known in high school.
I hate to be the third person to say this, but just how many things we can do, just how dynamic our fields are in both speech and audiology. The research is always being updated and changing. One day you may try one approach, then the next day you may try another approach. So, one thing I definitely wish I knew is how much the field really had to offer. Going in, I did not know. I knew I wanted to work with kids. Maybe I'll be school based, maybe I won't. And then going matriculating through undergrad and graduate programs, seeing, oh wow, like I don't just have to work with kids. I can work with adults with language disorders. I can work with adults who are struggling with imprecise articulation, things like that. So definitely looking at how broad and dynamic our field is, and the opportunities to work with other allied health professionals like OT and PT, and incorporating some of their ideas into therapy practices as well.
Thank you. And Tiffany, what do you wish you had known in high school about CSD?
I honestly just wish I knew about CSD in high school. Um, so I'm really happy that this is an event that is being hosted and that it's out there. I, like I said, I knew sign language. I knew I wanted to be in the deaf community, but I had no clue how that it was even going to be possible. I knew people who had gone to speech. I had known people who had hearing loss, but I had no clue what this field was, right? Um, Even though everyone has already said it, I would like to highlight like they're all focused on speech and language so far. Even in audiology, there are at least a dozen different paths you can take in audiology alone. So good on you for being here, listening, watching this webinar to learn about CSD in general, but also like really look at all of your options because there's so much in this field. And I guarantee you, if you have just the smallest amount of interest, you can find something within the CSD field that you'll enjoy.
Thank you all. I'm going to hand it back over to Andrea.
Wow, that was so good. Thank you all for sharing those experiences. I just wanted to add one thing. Maybe when I was in high school, I wasn't thinking about this, but I do want to add, nowadays we're thinking a whole lot about AI. And I just want to let you know that CSD careers are AI proof because really you've got to be a language and a communicator in order to interact with these tools in the first place. So I just want to let anyone know out there that if you are concerned and you are a communicator and you like to help people and you're interested in science, and there's so many other things I could say. Just think about us, check out some of our resources, and consider joining us as you think about how you want to show up in the world and what purpose you want to serve. And now we just like to give you an opportunity to tell us how we did. We are passionate about sharing our careers with students and people in general because there are sometimes I will meet parents and they're like, "Ooh, tell me more about audiology and SOP." So, hey, we'd love to do that. But please take a moment to scan this QR code. We've put together a survey so that you can let us know how did we do? What did you want to hear more about? And how can we get you to join us in the professions? So I will leave that up for a little bit to make sure that you can get that. And you all have been pretty fast today in filling out the poll, so I think you got it. All right. I'm going to move past it to say thank you again for joining us, watching our session. We hope that you've learned something about communication sciences and disorders, as well as audiology, speech language pathology, and our support personnel. And again, we appreciate you. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to my colleague Melanie, and thank you to the National Society of High School Scholars. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.